So on Monday night, I went over to Epsom, which is halfway between where my best friend lives, and we played pool. Today, at approximately 12 o'clock, when I was out for a run, I had a letter come through the front door, which was a parking ticket. Now, I parked in an area that was marked that I shouldn't have parked in. So I hold my hands up there. Fair enough. And I don't even want to get into the ins and outs of the rights and wrongs or what it does for councils and everything else. However, I think for me, it's a very interesting example of where we are. The British state is fundamentally completely incompetent at everything it does. And yet I got a speeding ticket, and within 2 days I had the paperwork through on my desk to be paid for. And in this case, exactly the same thing. I got a parking ticket, and 2 days later I had a letter asking me for money. And I think that's very, very telling. The British state is effectively incompetent up until the point where it wants to grub for money from you. And you see this again and again. If you say, for example, if you go around your local area, chance of you seeing a police officer on foot or anything else like that, or some other agent of the government, if you want to put it that way, slim to nothing. Likelihood of seeing a parking attendant, pretty high actually. Likelihood of seeing a parking enforcement car, very high. And I think this is half the challenge or half the problem that people have got now with it, which is simply that we're in a situation where people now just feel like the state is becoming fully extractive and there's no give in it. I don't have an issue per se with getting a parking ticket, fine 3 points, whatever. It's annoying, but fair enough. I don't necessarily have a problem with getting a parking ticket. However, from the other perspective, the parking ticket was given to me at 7:30 at night on a dark, dingy road on the outskirts of Epsom. How hard are you going to try and find my one little car that was parking half an hour early? And what does that say about your priorities as an organisation? That A, you have people out at that time of night in the freezing cold, grubbing around trying to find someone who's parked there, but actually also what messages are sent to people. I regularly, like I said, because of where we live in different parts or around the edge of London, that's kind of in that area, Oxshott and everything else is where we meet. What does it say to people that when you turn up there to spend money in that area, and bearing in mind Epsom, like pretty much every other high street, used to be very busy, even on a Monday night, and is now literally like a ghost town, it's the fact that your reaction is to go for the parking ticket rather than perhaps go, well, actually, maybe, that person is here spending money and whatever else. As I said, and I think this is a general feeling that particularly I'm going to say it, the productive classes, the people of us who've got jobs, have always had jobs that get on with our life, pay our taxes and do everything else. We're the backbone of this country. It's not the working class, the middle class, the anyone else who's doing their tax and everything else. And it just really feels like the state is extractive now. You get sweet FA for your money. You get even less as a thank you from people. I mean, good God, don't go on Twitter and actually ever turn around and go, well, look, I pay my way and, I'm quite happy to. But, I feel like I feel sometimes like I'm slightly overtaxed. Like, you get a wave of abuse for it. And you get told that you're, I've had it many times, lying, cheating, whatever else. And you think, gosh, I didn't go to university. I started working, as you do, kind of doing Saturday jobs and everything else, like in my early to mid-teens. I got an actual job with I went to work for Carlsberg Tetley, the brewery, doing beer rounds. I worked at Sainsbury's, Summerfield. And then when I was 19, because I went back to do one more accelerated A-level, I went out into the world to work. I didn't even go to university. I did none of that. I'm not complaining to those people who go to university, but since before I was even 19, I've been paying into this system and I've been getting less and less out of this system. And at some stage, you just begin to feel like you're just a pig that's being sacrificed day by day and gently bled dry. And that's really what I feel like. And I'm sure I'm not alone. And like I said, it's the as much as anything else, it's the local touch points as well as from central government that gets to you. There's never a sense of that the state wants to do you a favour. It's never a sense that the state is willing to listen to you if you have mitigating circumstances or anything else. However, if you're a politician, if you're a civil servant, if you're something like that, amazingly, the state does seem to want to listen to your many excuses and seems to be tolerant of things that it wouldn't be tolerant of from other people. And again, I think a lot of people are starting to see that, notice it, and it's starting to become a major, major problem for us. At some stage, the politicians, the civil servants, the crown servants, and everyone else that makes up the political class and the governing classes of this country have got to realise that people are no longer going to put up with it anymore. I think there's a line that's gone over in recent years in terms of the amount of tax that's being extracted when we've already getting hammered financially ourselves with inflation and everything else, and particularly in the last year or so, because that's inflation generated by you, Rachel Reeves. You drove inflation back up. You've ensured that basically our mortgage payments didn't drop down, and yet you're still coming back for more. Okay, but there is a line that I think people have gone over, and people are now looking around and just going, this just doesn't work for me. This is not a nice system. I don't like this anymore. I'm no longer willing to just sit there and placidly get basically punched by the state on an ongoing basis over these things. And I think this is what the political and governing classes have got to wrap their heads around. But I actually would argue that a good chunk of the public sector, the unions and everything else who bleat out for more money all the time, they're going to have to suddenly wrap their heads around the fact that there is a change of weather within this country. It is a, excuse me, apologies. There is a change of weather in this country, change of direction. People are now not going to just be told continuously, oh, it's for the NHS, whatever else. People are now looking around and going, well, actually, day in, day out, I can see examples of the state pissing my money down the drain, money taken from me when I'm also maybe not struggling in terms of I can always put food on the table, but the nice little things that I used to be able to afford even as a middle class person are now being taken away from me. And yet I have the state coming back day in, day out, picking my pocket, always trying to extract that extra £2.50 from me. And I'm sorry to say that I think, like I said, we're pretty much over it. And I think that that change of weather, the unions are going to have to wrap their head around and Labour as well, because historically their response to it, as you see it always in the elections, is, it's 2.5 seconds to save the NHS, and then they, cloak themselves in the NHS thing and everything else. And, too many times now people are just looking around and going, too much money wasted. Why do I have to pay for this? And I think that this is going to become a refrain that actually now the reality of how much, for example, illegal migration is costing us. 15 billion? That's a lot of money. That's basically a lot of the problems we have at a local level fixed. And again, that's just not that goes from there all the way up to DER, all the way down to DEI people in government, through to councils painting bloody trans insignia on crossings and everything else. People are now looking around and just going, you're wasting my money and I'm not willing to keep giving you more money. And that change of weather is going to feed down very hard into how the state is going to have to, how the public sector and the broader state is going to have to deal with things. And I just think that's where we are. As I said, put aside the parking ticket, whatever, I'll pay the money, fair enough. But for me, it's just, like I said, it's just a really good example of a state that is now highly extractive against the people who've done everything right. I've done everything right? Okay, no one can complain that I've been a strain on the state. I started work. I've claimed benefits once in my life when I smashed 3 vertebrae, and I think I was on sick pay or whatever it was for 6 months. Okay, that was it. That's the only time. Even when I came back from travelling and I was looking for a job, I lived off my savings. When I was made redundant a year and a half ago, I lived off my savings. I am as far from being a strain on the state as you can get. And I've never had a problem historically with paying into the state. My family, my mother and parents split when I was younger. People who know me on Twitter know that one of the things that you can guarantee you'll get a reaction against is people who have a go at single mothers and call them awful things. You will almost always get a reaction from me because it is a massive thing for me. So I've never ever objected to paying into the state. I'm a social democrat by political slant. And I think that, my family, as I was growing up, we were lucky enough to have the state there to support us, and it's right and proper that I've paid in. But there is a time and a place, and I have to say I'm over it now. I really, really am over it. I'm over the waste. I'm over that real sense that I'm just having the piss taken out of me. And I feel like I'm having the piss taken out of me, not because the state is desperate to spend money on stuff that I wouldn't mind them spending it on. They're just slamming it down on stuff that, frankly, I find actually quite personally offensive. There is no reason for the public sector to have DEI aid people. There is no reason for the public sector to be spending money on net zero, illegal migrants. Hell, I could even at this stage, I'm starting to question support for the Ukraine war because I feel like I've given enough. But you know what? That's a whole different debate. My point is just purely there is always money when the political class want to find it, and there is always more money for the things they want to spend it on. Well, I'm saying now, I suspect I'm not alone, and in the polling probably almost certainly the polling does back me up, is the fact that even those of us who are social democrat by leaning, whatever else. Hell, even most conservatives I know, okay, only the very, very extremes don't say you've got to be willing to pay tax and everything else because they accept it that taxes and even a relatively well-developed welfare state plus government is basically supported by some sort of general taxation is the price you have to pay for some sort of civilized society. But you know what? If you're starting to lose me and lots of other people like me who are naturally inclined to support relatively high taxes and the wish to want to invest in government, then I think that you are probably on a hiding to nothing in terms of longer term now. And I suspect when this budget comes out, and there was already a release earlier on today to say that Reeves is going to raise benefit spending in line with certain inflation or everything else, and someone wittily put it, they can it's benefits for shirkers, tax rises for strivers, something like that. That's how a lot of people are going to start interpreting it. My pay rise for this last year did not really catch up with inflation. And like most other people in this country, and I'm not claiming that I'm special in any shape or form. We've done a lot better than a lot of people, so I'm not claiming that we're on the breadline. But my salary, if I adjust for inflation over the last 25 years plus experience and everything else, my salary basically is barely keeping track with inflation. It's not even playing catch with in terms of seniority, promotion, everything else. And certainly over the last 5 years, the COVID thing, what little gains I had made have been evaporated off. And again, that's the same for a lot of people. So when government stands up and goes, well, we're going to find even more money for people on benefits, for migrants or anyone else, then I'm sorry. I'm at that stage where I'm starting to kind of go, well, I'm sorry, this is basically BS. It's not fair. It's not fair that you can't forever just keep picking out pockets to transfer wealth to other people, particularly at a time when you have 5% unemployment and rising, and we've got an absolute bucket load of problems in this country that you could quite happily throw problems at. For example, have people out. Again, it sucks. This is where I'm a social democrat, but I'm quite tough. have people out cleaning up rubbish, cleaning up graffiti, doing gardening, etc., etc. Help them learn new skills, but actually also, why should we have to live in a? Why are we paying people to not do anything when there's so many problems that the state needs manpower for, but doesn't have the money to pay them for, allegedly? So anyway, a very meandering piece. I apologise for that. It was kind of like shoehorned in with a couple of vignettes of what's gone on in my life. But just the general point is the fact that I just generally just feel that the state is extractive, and I really do think that there is a line that's gone over, and I have a sneaking suspicion, well, more than a sneaking suspicion, I think this budget will go down hideously, not just because of the tax rises, but because the choices they're going to make in these tax rises. Anyhow, that's it. Speak to you soon. Thank you.